get started. That was a joke, but okay. First of all, I'd like to ask if there are any requests for bill introductions. Yes, Representative Blacks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Representative Blacks, House District 12, and I'd like to introduce RS 2681. And this would be reference to a half-cent city sales tax for the big city of Latham, 138 people that did not make the newspaper in time for the 21 days. So I'm introducing that and stand for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Any objections to the introduction? Seeing none, the request is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other requests for bill introductions? Yes, Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This would be RS 2989. It's an act relating to sales and compensating use tax for crisis pregnancy centers as far as an exemption. And if you have any questions, I would be open.
Okay. Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Any objection to the request? Seeing none, the request is approved. Are there any other requests for bill introductions? Representative Carlin. Good timing.
There it is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have the committee do a bill. It won't be with my name on it. It'll be a committee bill, if you will do so, please. I'm introducing RS 2884. 2884 is the RS number. This is a bill that would give a sales tax exemption to area agencies on aging that are already not getting a sales tax exemption. I have a copy of the bill. Would you like to have me leave that with you?
No, the okay. RS number is sufficient. Right. Thank you.
If there are no questions, I'll just go back to my meeting.
I'll ask the committee quickly. Are there any questions? Any objection? Seeing none, the request is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Are there any further requests for bill introductions? Seeing none, we will move right along to our item for the day. We have a hearing on House Bill 2571, and I would turn to the revisor's office for an overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2571 would provide that an individual would be able to, would only be required to pay sales tax or the use tax on the difference in the price of a vehicle when an individual sells a vehicle and then purchases a new or used vehicle within 180 days. Individuals would be able to either provide the county treasurer the bills of sale at the time of vehicle registration for this deduction, or apply to the Department of Revenue for a refund. Kind of two avenues to get the discount. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions for the revisor's office? If there aren't any, I do have one question. The bill requires, and just help me clarify on this, if they sell their vehicle before they buy the new one, or is it after? It can't be either or.
It's really, it says subsequent on line 10, excuse me. It's really a sale and then a purchase. How close in time that is, I would probably have to defer to the Department of Revenue, but that it does almost imply that a sale then a purchase.
Okay, so if I bought a vehicle and then I sold mine subsequently after that, the dealer wasn't giving me what I wanted, I would not qualify for this?
Probably the time frame would determine on, probably defer to Department of Revenue to how they would interpret that exactly.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Representative Sanders.
Now, it's my understanding that the impetus of this bill is private party sales versus dealership. Is that correct?
That is correct. Currently, under Kansas law, when you do a trade-in at a dealer, part of the selling price, as the term is defined, includes the value of the trade-in. So when you do a trade-in on a vehicle, the ultimate price that you pay sales tax in is the cost of the vehicle purchased minus the value of the trade-in.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you have 180 days, you could go ahead and buy your car from the dealer, and sometime during that 180 days, you could take your validation of sale in and get that tax refunded. Is that correct?
The 180 days only applies to the, if you sell a vehicle and then you purchase within 180 days, you actually would then have 3 years to submit for the refund, I believe, under line 36 of page 1.
Okay, but I guess my question is, would it have to be just only private party? Could it not be through when you purchase a car from a dealer?
You could purchase a car from a dealer.
And then one more question. Other states do this already, don't they? This isn't something new and genius, correct?
I believe there were a couple other states that were provided to me, so I believe that is a correct statement.
And from my research, as we move more to an internet-based selling of automobiles and things like that, this law probably is going to become more and more relevant. So, thank you.
Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Adam. Committee, I'd like to welcome Department of Revenue now to review the fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Kansas Department of Revenue. We weren't able to find data at this point to provide a fiscal estimate on this bill. We do know that it would reduce state and local sales tax revenues, but we just don't know at this point how much that would be. We are working to see if we can gather that data, but right now I don't have an estimate. I apologize.
And does the department have any idea other states that may have this implemented?
I do not know of any.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any questions for Kathleen? Yes, Representative Baker.
I think Arkansas does it right now.
Okay.
Yes, Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Smith, it appears, would this be a difficult thing for the department to enforce and collect?
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that we are going to have some difficulty in processing this, but all of that can be overcome at this point. But trying to track the number of days between a sale and a purchase, I think, is going to be a little bit difficult at this point.
And I believe I read that there's a tendency for a person who sells a vehicle privately to understate the sale, the price, the sale price. And you have no way of verifying that then, do you, if that's the case?
That is possible, and I think the county treasurers are going to have some problems with that, so we'll have to work that out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just to follow up on that, full disclosure, my wife is a county treasurer, and that is an issue. But honestly, with this bill, people might be incentivized to actually report their correct price because they'd be getting more of that credit back, but then do you run the risk of overestimating because they aren't actually paying? This is the refund that they're applying for. I believe in the bill it states that information will be notarized, but a notary is simply verifying the identity of a person, not necessarily the validity of a transaction. So, yes. Representative Blex, no? Further questions? Representative Corbett?
Thank you, Catherine. So do you need, does it say here that you need an additional FTE to work this?
It does say that, yes, to process the refunds.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Kathleen. Committee will welcome our first proponent of House Bill 2571, our very own Representative Carl Turner. Come on down.
Is this on? Yep, good. We just got to bring it back up here again. All right. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Good questions already, but thank you for the opportunity to discuss a bill that I think has potential benefit to all Kansans, or at least all Kansans that own vehicles, which is a large group of us. This bill would equalize the current unequal sales tax treatment when purchasing a new vehicle and disposing of the old vehicle. So under current law, as you've heard a bit, you can buy a new vehicle, and then get a trade-in credit if you work at a dealer. So if it's a simultaneous transaction where you're buying this car and I'm trading in my old car, then you get a trade-in credit, and you will pay sales tax only on the net difference. So even if, so there's a couple of examples in my testimony. Number one is you take a car, you buy a car at the dealer for $30,000, and then you trade in an old car worth $10,000, so your sales tax bill would be on the difference, which is $20,000. In second example, it talks about the same transaction, but basically instead of trading it in, you sell it to someone for $12,000, but now you pay tax on the full value of the new car, which is the $30,000. So in that same transaction, which is essentially the same kind of a purchase and sale, the tax bill is $10,000 higher if you elect to sell your car by yourself rather than go out, or rather than trade it in. So, you know, the basic premise here is that Kansans should be afforded the same sales tax treatment whether they choose to trade in or sell the vehicle themselves. You know, and this bill levels the sales tax playing field by expanding, basically just by expanding the trade-in window. So you can trade in now, in the way I understood the bill to be worded, and the way I read it, it's 180 days before or after. And that does mirror Missouri, which is already been doing this for a number of years. So in those examples that I gave you, he would only in both cases owe tax on the net difference between the value of the new car and the value of the old car. And then there's been discussion, and also this bill would promote more accurate reporting. As has been discussed, there was a post-audit done in 2003, and it really was focused on how well we're collecting sales tax, whether it be from dealers or from private transactions. And you know, it found that big dealers were doing well, small dealers weren't doing so well, and they did some corrective action at that time. But as part of that, they did find that nearly half of the vehicles reviewed sold privately were being underreported. And I believe that this will remedy that situation, and because largely the thing that's creating the opportunity for that is that there's no second party on the transaction. So you've got one guy, and his motive is to have that price be as low as possible, and there's no counterparty to the deal right now. With this bill, there will be a counterparty to the deal. So you're right that the notary isn't notarizing anything other than the two parties that represent to be the two parties are themselves, but the number that goes on the page as far as what the sale price was is signed on and notarized by both parties. So it becomes the source of truth, and then it just becomes a matter of associating that VIN number with that price. So if I sell my car to another person, one of us is going to be the first to register a car, and it will be associated with that VIN number. So I believe it will remedy the situation that was disclosed back in that post-audit report 20 years ago. I don't view that this is a new exemption. I think it's just really an exemption or a trade-in allowance that's already allowed, and that this bill just makes it accessible to all by expanding the time frame for that purchase and sale to come together. I think it's auditable for the reasons of having that bill of sale and associating the sale price for both parties. It will take some programming, as you've heard from the Department of Revenue. You know, everything's easy when we sit in a room, but I'm not a code person, but I can think of logic that would easily come up with this. And as I said, it's already being done in Missouri, so this isn't new science. anyway, with that, I would say that, this this has potential benefit to all Kansans. It makes it accessible to all, and, Missouri has given equal treatment to their residents for years, and I think Kansans deserve the same. Thank you, and with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Turner.
Yes.
Back to the original question we had earlier. The language in here implies to me anyway that you buy a new car and you have to sell your old one before you buy that new car. If you sell it afterwards, you gain nothing.
I'm not sure. I mean, the language I'm looking at is on first page, and it says, the word subsequently. That's the killer. Is that what you're referring to? Okay. Yeah, because hang on a minute. Partial payment on sale and new.
It's saying you have to trade it in or you can sell it and then go buy the car. But it doesn't say anything about buying the new car and then selling that afterwards, is the way I'm reading it. So is there confusion here, or am I the one that's confused?
That's partial payment. Well, I guess we would have to amend it because the intent, and maybe I didn't scrutinize it closely enough from the revisor, was that it be 180 days prior to. So in the earlier question and the way the revisor presented it was that you could sell your car and then at the time of registration you would be able to get the net, or you could sell it after you purchased the new car, but it's a window both ways.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you for that clarification. That was a question I had, and I just wanted to know what the intent was, and if we need to clarify that, we can have an amendment. Committee, are there any further questions? Yes, Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And is the bill of sale that you talked about, does both the buyer and the seller have to have the bill of sale that shows the same price? So the buyer doesn't say, I sold it for $10,000 and or whatever, and, or say they sold it for 50 and the buyer says they bought it for 10. Is there a matching bill of sale each one of them would have to provide?
My answer to that would be that I envision both parties going and getting it notarized. So they're both present, that both of them are signing on to the same document, that they're vouching that this is the price, and I assume mileage would be on there as well. But the price, both parties would be present, and that's the value of the notary to, as you say, identify that these are the individuals and that this is the agreed to price.
Any further questions, committee? Better check my computer. Last chance, this is our only proponent. Okay.
In person, there are other proponents out there.
Yes. Seeing none, Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative. So just kind of letting this kind of wither inside of my head a little bit here. Is it, in your opinion, do you think it actually could be for, as far as a fiscal note, could actually be net positive?
I wouldn't guess that it would be a net positive. I think there would be some gains on the resale, but, there's a lot of car transactions, and I'm a bit surprised that it didn't come back with a fiscal note. I know back, I couldn't find anything more recent, but looking at that 2003 post-audit study, by far, most people go through dealers. I mean, I think of the sales tax collected, it was 90 to 10 or something like that in terms of dealer transactions and private transactions. So I think the thing that draws people to a dealer to make these transactions is the convenience of it and not having a hassle and do all the rest. I don't expect a lot of people are going to peel away from that because they love that. So, I think the value is to the people that model doesn't work for them and they prefer to do their own transactions. So I don't think it'll be huge, but it won't be a net positive. I think there'll be some gains on the more accurate reporting of the sale transactions as we just discussed, but I think the other number is probably going to be beyond the savings. So.
Eddie, is that LPA something that you could track down and shoot out to the committee? It'd just be of interest to let everybody. Right. Okay. Thank you. Representative Corbett.
I know that a lot of people are probably worried that they're going to lose some money on this bill, but Kansas is 47th out of 50th. There's only 3 states tax cars worse than we do. So I think we're going to survive, and I think it's a good bill.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in the district I live in, we've had numerous car dealerships close. And my question is, how many counties in the state don't even have a car dealership anymore? That number is probably growing in leaps and bounds. And I'm sure at some point, somewhere we can find that number, but I know the representative from the auto dealers is here, and is that a fair statement? Okay. Anyway, well, I just think that times are changing. I know out where you live that the number of auto dealerships has certainly diminished also. So, yeah, just a comment there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Baker. Committee, Representative Schmidt.
Just one quick question. I mean, can you foresee anything other than cars, for instance, that would require a tag, such as a camper trailer, for instance, or I don't know if there'd be anything else, but I can think of that right away. Would that be something that would not be covered in this, I'm assuming, right?
I'm not familiar with the laws on camper trailers. Would that be a motorized RV kind of a vehicle? But
no, if it was a pull trailer, then I think it still has to be tagged. So you would probably still have to.
I'm not aware of what the law is on those. But I do think there's some language in the current sales tax that you can trade a trailer for a car. If I remember correctly, I could get you that passage. It's in a manual, I know.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the current bill specifically states motor vehicle. I don't know if the revisor would want to clarify any further definition on that.
I mean, it's a broad definition, but generally, as a component of the definition of motor vehicle, there is a motorized element to it. So trailers are defined elsewhere. So, you know, if it's truly a trailer, a pull-behind trailer, they would not qualify.
Thank you for that clarification. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Committee, we also have some written-only testimony, proponent testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to appear as a proponent? Seeing none, we will move to our neutral testimony and welcome Don McNeely from the Kansas Automobile Dealers Association. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Don McNeely, and I serve as president of the Kansas Auto Dealers Association. And having spent 31 years in this building, I thought I'd maybe offer a little historical perspective or some comments in regards to this bill, as this bill has been introduced and debated several times, especially over the last 20 years. Representative Turner, thank you very much for reaching out to me a couple weeks ago. And from his testimony, he listened to everything I said. So, I mean, I wish I could get more people to listen to me as intently as you did, Representative. But again, thank you very much for reaching out. As I did tell Representative Turner, is that, you know, besides the fiscal note that's been debated back and forth over the years, it really comes down that these transactions need to be auditable, just like they are within the dealerships. And I think that's why the dealerships had the current tax law, is that they're, you know, auditable by the Department of Revenue, where the individual transactions between individuals were not. And meaning tying the selling price and the purchase price together, so that the appropriate amount of sales tax is paid by the purchaser, and in this case, the appropriate amount of sales tax refund would be recouped by the seller of the vehicle. As Representative Turner stated, there was a legislative post-audit study performed back in 2003 on motor vehicle sales and the corresponding sales and use tax. And again, as Representative Turner said, approximately half of the vehicles sampled showed that the sales price being submitted to the county treasurer's office was less than half of the retail value of the vehicle. In fact, there were several, the sample size showed that there were $5,000 and $6,000 valued vehicles that were being reported as having $1 as a sales price, $50 as a sales price, $100 as a sales price. And just for point of reference, they were looking at 2002 sales, because again, this post-audit study was performed in 2003, and there were approximately, I think, 102,000 casual sales reported to the county treasurer's office in fiscal year 2002. And that makes sense. I think you said out of 10 sales, 9 would be done at a dealership, one would be performed casually, maybe between neighbors, something like that. You know, at the time that they did the post-audit study, as it is today, the buyer was required to obtain a notarized bill of sale stating the sales price that the vehicle was acquired. But it was believed that many cases on that notarized bill of sale, the amount line was left vacant or left blank, or there was a lower price put on that notarized bill of sale. The 2004 legislature immediately attempted to address this by passing legislation that assigned a valuation and thus sales tax to a casual sale. So essentially what it was that they applied the assessed value that the vehicle was being imposed for property tax, and then they compared it to the selling price being reported to the county treasurer, and the individual was charged the higher amount in terms of sales tax. Needless to say, there was a lot of public outcry immediately upon the passage of that bill, and that language was immediately repealed in 2005. Because of all this, we do believe, as Representative Turner stated, that this transaction needs to be tied together for both the buyer and seller. And I think you'd have to talk to the Department of Revenue, but with the new mover system that has been implemented by the Department of Revenue since this legislative post-audit study was performed almost 20 years ago, that some kind of electronic filing possibly could be submitted to the Department of Revenue. That transaction price would be entered into the mover system, and that way when the individual would show up to register the vehicle and thus pay their sales tax, the county treasurer would have that amount available, electronically on the mover system, thus not putting the county treasurer in the position of questioning the honesty of one of their constituents in terms of the transaction price. But those are just some general comments, just from having been involved in this issue several different times over the last few years. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Committee, Representative Baker.
Thank you. I'm glad you came forward because a little more clarity. So as I drive around, I see all these Carvana trucks all over, and then cars.com and all these different sites where people can buy their cars and have it delivered to them. So would you walk me through that? So I'm going to trade in my 57 Buick. And am I going to trade it to Carvana? They probably won't buy my 57 Buick, will they?
Well, they will, yeah. Yeah, they'll purchase a vehicle.
You and my 57 Buick that doesn't have a stated value?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't. Your 57 Buick, I have no idea if they would.
I don't understand how that, so they will take it.
Yeah, right.
So my question is Carvana, if I see a car on Carvana I like and I buy that car, they operate then as a dealer, they take the trade-in car also?
Right, well, currently they do not have a retail facility in the state of Kansas. So that situation, you would go to your county treasurer with your bill of sale, and the county treasurer would impose sales tax when you register your vehicle in Kansas.
But what about my trade-in?
Well,
will they give me the stated value of what they gave me for the trade-in?
Are you selling your trade-in to Carvana, or are you going to sell it if you sell it to your neighbor? No. The county
That's
treasurer.
what this bill does. It allows you to sell it to your neighbor.
Well, yes, and but this is a casual or isolated sales bill. The dealers are not involved in this, whether or not you're a Kansas licensed dealer or a Missouri licensed dealer.
Okay, thank you very much. It's all changing.
But as a comment, I would, if we're going to go down this road with 180 days, I would like to see an amendment also to dealer sales, because right now, in order for the consumer to get a trade-in credit on their sales transaction within the dealership on a used vehicle, that has to happen at the same time. Now, with new vehicles, it's got to happen within a reasonable amount of time. And I worked with Kathleen and her staff last year because of the microchip crisis. People were trading in their vehicles early because of the escalated values everyone's read about, the escalated value of used vehicles, but yet their new vehicle wouldn't arrive for 6, 8, 9 months. And so the Department of Revenue, since it's not codified in statute as to what a reasonable time period is, during this microchip crisis or shortage, they have allowed the consumer to postpone the purchase of that new vehicle up to 6 months in order to get that trade-in credit, which we very much appreciate the department working with our industry because of the situation that was presented during this pandemic.
Committee, any further questions? Representative Corbett.
This may not be to Mr. McNeely, but maybe Eddie or Representative Turner. It shouldn't be that hard to, if it's been in Missouri for years, or shouldn't be that hard to get the language and get some records of what's happening over there. It's got some good traction. Just may be new to Kansas, but be nice to see something.
No pun intended with the traction here. Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you feel like if we pass this bill that the price of new vehicles will increase?
No. I mean, that's not going to affect the pricing of the vehicle.
Because I've been told by my local dealer that, we don't make, and that may be just a story, we don't make any money on these new ones we sell. We make our money on the trade-ins and,
That's true. I mean, that's true. Is that
so then if they're not making money on trade-ins, then they'd have to raise the price of, I couldn't buy that car as cheap.
Yeah, I mean, the business model for the dealership is the revenue comes from used vehicle sales and fixed operations. Is that,
okay?
Of course, the pandemic has changed all of that.
Yeah.
But, hopefully it'll get back to some resemblance of normalcy, whatever normal is anymore, so. Yeah.
Committee, any further questions? Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Response to the other representative, yes, it's done in Missouri. The forms are developed and it's been operational for years and years. So it's not a high hill to climb. And the numbers that were on the fiscal note, were relatively small. I mean, in terms of having to do administrative things and do some coding to develop the matching that Mr. McNeely has described. So my question to you is in this, I was wondering, so when someone trades a car in, how quickly does my name come off of that? So is that car sitting on the lot of the dealer with still registered to Carl, or when does my name come off on a trade-in?
It just depends upon the vehicle. I mean, of course, now, you can't use what has happened over the last 2 years. Prior to COVID, is the dealer would evaluate that vehicle, whether or not they wanted to keep that vehicle on their lot, or that vehicle would be dispensed through a wholesaler, or they'd be taking it to an auction. And, now, especially the last 2 years, the dealers are taking a closer look at these vehicles in order to see whether or not they want to retain those vehicles and thus retail them. But the dealers would take your title and then get a title only putting that vehicle in their name.
I think that was the answer. I'm sorry, so my name would come off the title when I leave the dealership, essentially?
Not always, but with the new car dealer, my membership, way over 95%, those vehicles are put in the dealership's name. They get a title only. Now, some independent dealers, there's still reassignments left on the title. They can use those.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Representative Baker.
Thank you for a second time. So what percent do you suppose of your dealerships that are out there, the new car dealers, because there's different kinds of dealerships, of course, the new car dealerships, how many of those are are conglomerates that have, like a Superior and some of those people that operate nationwide. I mean, it seems to me like I'm seeing more and more of those creeping. Well, they don't creep into my area, they just creep into the metro areas.
Yeah, but even, we have communities in Kansas the size of Council Grove that we've had an emergence over the last 15, 20 years of almost a rural mega dealer, if you will, as opposed to just metro mega dealers where it's consolidation. It's just not the retail automobile industry that's consolidating. Everyone's consolidating. Some of you are the same age as I am. I remember when I was a kid, farm kid growing up in Illinois, every town had a Chevrolet dealer, an Oldsmobile dealer, a Cadillac dealer, a Ford dealer, a Lincoln dealer, a Dodge dealer, a Plymouth dealer. You go on and on. Look in terms of our membership, in the early 1960s, our membership was over 1,200 dealers in the state of Kansas. Now we're down to 230 dealerships in the state of Kansas.
So that's essentially 2 per county.
Yeah, and I mean, as you all know, especially looking in western Kansas, just in the 30 years I've been here, is that, like you said earlier, there's a lot of counties that no longer have a franchised new car dealer. And at one time, they had 15, 20 of them there.
Okay, just follow up on that. So one of my heartburns and some of the constituents have asked about, without throwing anybody under the bus, the sales tax on those automobiles, in some of my counties, they'll be a net winner on this because right now there is no dealer in that county. So anytime somebody goes buys a car, they have to buy it from a dealership 150, 200, or 300 miles away, and that sales tax money stays there.
Yeah.
And that
gets into the whole tax side of.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue, but I guess we'll beat that horse another day. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much for allowing me today.
Thank you. We do not have any opponents, or is there anyone else wishing to appear on House Bill 2571? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on House Bill 2571. Committee, that concludes our business for the day. If there is nothing else for the good of the committee, we are adjourned.